Hello everybody. In this video I want to do a little walkthrough of how to do the empirical rules, specifically with respect to a normal distribution. So first things first, I want to show you where we have a couple of tools that can help us out. If we go to the statistician's toolbox, and before we do this, let me go to the student view so it's exactly what you will see. If we go down to the statistician's toolbox and we go down to our flowcharts, there's going to be two files in here that are really useful. The class flowchart, which is just a PowerPoint presentation that has a whole bunch of material on there to help us out with our different sections. This is really useful and you can use it on your exams coming up. And then the other one is the bell curve visualization. And this one is an Excel file that has some tools in here to help us visualize the normal distribution so that we don't have to draw it by hand. It's really useful, does a lot of calculations for us. Now, one thing I will say that when you download the bell curve visualization, if you have a PC, one thing that you will need to do, because it has macros into it, go open it up like in your downloads, do a two-finger click on the bell curve visualization, go to the properties, and when it opens up, you're going to need to make sure that you click down in this attribute. Sometimes they will see that it's blocked or something, and you'll need to click unblock, apply, and OK. And let's see if I have one where I haven't unblocked it yet. Let me do a two-finger click on this one. Let's look at these properties. It looks like I've unblocked them already. But you can go in and you can see that. Let me just download it again so I can show you. Download the bell curve visualization. Let me go to my downloads again. Okay, and in my downloads with the bell curve visualization, you do a two-finger or right click, go down to properties, and here you'll want to click unblock, apply, and OK. And that will make it so that you can actually use the Excel sheet as it's supposed to be used. But let's go first to our flowchart. And in our flowchart, there's a lot of things in here: definitions, symbols, what they mean, what are inequalities, a bunch of formulas for help with Excel. And then we have this spot here that's called empirical rules. And these are the rules that work for every distribution of a normal distribution. And what we see here is that, okay, normal distribution is in a bell shape with these properties that one standard deviation is reached at the inflection point, or where our normal distribution switches from like being concave up to being concave down. And so it happens on either side of those. If we go plus or minus one standard deviation here, that accounts for 68% of all observations for something that is in a normal distribution. So let's take, for example, heights of men in the United States. Heights of men in the United States has a mean of 5'10" and we'll say with a standard deviation of probably about, we'll say 2 inches or 3 inches. So if we go up 3 inches to maybe 6'1" and down 3 inches to 5'7", that accounts for like 68% of all people, of all men in the US, is within plus or minus one standard deviation. Now, if we go to plus or minus 2 standard deviations, that would account for 95% of all observations if it follows a normal distribution. And then 99.7 is the percentage if we go plus or minus 3 standard deviations. And that's kind of like our empirical rules. Now, if we break down our empirical rules a little bit, if we go from the midpoint to just plus 1 standard deviation, that's kind of this salmon colored area, that's 34%. If we go from 1 to 2 standard deviations away, that's 13.5%. From 2 to 3, that is 2.35%. And from 3 all the way to infinity is this 0.15, or the probability regions. We also know that from the mean to the right or to the left is 50% of the area. So those are our empirical rules, and we can use those rules to help us answer a whole bunch of questions if we know that something follows a normal distribution. So let's go ahead and take a look at this scenario that I've got right here. And it says that Daniel is trying to understand the distribution of sales prices of dogs in his area. He knows, oops, forgot a W. Let's put in a W. There we go. He knows that they follow approximately a normal distribution with a mean of 200 and a standard deviation of 30. So let's go over to this normal distribution visualization tool. We'll set our mean here, or mu, at 200 and our standard deviation at 30. And right now we're just going to be dealing with a sample size of 1. We'll deal with increasing sample sizes in a week or so ahead. Okay, so we have this, and look, it has our normal distribution. We have the mean here at 200. We have one standard deviation above and below is at 30, so we go down 30 is at 170, and up 30 is at 230. And we say, hey, the middle 68% of sales are between what two prices? Now we know from our flow chart that plus or minus one standard deviation gets us 68% of all of our observations. So we know that this middle 68% are between what two prices? And so we'd say 170 and 230. Now check this out. If we type this in here to 170 and do our right cut at 230, we can see what the percent of the shaded region is, and it'll shade it for us, is roughly 68%. Okay, the middle 95%, let's go back to our flow chart. The middle 95% were plus or minus 2 standard deviations. So let's go look at where our plus or minus 2 standard deviations here. So our standard deviation is 30. When we multiply it by 2, that'd be 60. So we'll go plus or minus 60 from our 200. So that means down to 140 and up to 260. So let's go ahead and put those in. We have 140 to 260. So that's plus or minus 2 standard deviations. And notice here it is our roughly 95% of sales. So this first one, let me just go ahead and put that in real quick. 170, comma, 230. Oopsies, let's do a comma. This one here is 140, comma, 260. And then let's look at the middle 99.7. If we go back to our PowerPoint, middle 99.7 is plus or minus 3 standard deviations. So let's do that. Plus or minus 3 standard deviations here would be down to 110 and 290. So let's do that. Let's just double check that those areas make sense. 110 and 290, and we get 99.7%. We go from, let's type that in again, 110, comma, 290. Okay, this one's a little bit different. So this one says 84% of sales are less than what price. So we're looking for, if we shade from the left and we shade all the way up to 84%. Let's go look at our flowchart again and our empirical rules. Notice we can get to 50% by going up all the way to the middle. So that gives us the bottom 50%. And then if we add up just one standard deviation more, we get an extra 34%. So 50% plus 34% is going to give us 84%. Where if we type that in here, so let's go from, do negative INF to go from negative infinity. And then the right cut, we're going to go all the way up to one standard deviation above, which is 230. And let's see, yep, it's shaded from negative infinity to 230, and that is this 84%. That's exactly what we're looking for. So the cutoff here is going to be 230. Next, it says 97.5% of sales are greater than what price? So we're looking at this from some cutoff point shading to the right is going to get us 97.5%. Let's go back here. We know that we can get to 97.5 if we were already at 84% with adding in one standard deviation. And then if we add in one more, we would get to 97.5. But the problem is this is going the wrong direction. This would be 97.5 or less than this point. We want to go the other direction. Well, notice that we can still just take this true at going, instead of plus 2 standard errors or standard deviations, we can go minus 2 standard errors and go all the way, or standard deviations, excuse me, and go all the way to positive infinity. So let's give that a shot. So here we're going to go from 2 standard deviations to the left, which is 140, and then we're going to extend all the way to infinity. We'll just type in INF, and that takes us to 99 or 97.7. Now remember, this calculation is doing the actual calculations, and so it's more accurate. The empirical rules are just our rules of thumb of how to get really quick answers with our normal distribution, and so that would be 140. Anyhow, that's how we kind of use our empirical rules to help us answer questions about our scenarios. We can also do these from the other direction. We could say, like, what percentage is below 260, right? And so we're like, okay, that's not bad. We can do what percentage is below 260 instead of saying like these percentages. And we can say that if we go from negative infinity and we go to 260, that would give us 97, roughly 97%. Or this is right, 2 standard deviations and to the left. So a couple of ways we can look at this and how we can use our empirical rules. Good luck on using this on your own assignments.